Welcome again to another edition of the Church Solutions podcast. My name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
Steve, I've had a head cold now for about a week.
Yes.
It's been painful.
Yes. We're getting to that age where we're talking about all our ailments. So that's not an ailment, though. This just is something that's come your way.
Yeah, I've had a head cold. Actually, I feel better, but I'm still hacking and runny nose and all that stuff. So it's a good thing that we are not working in the same office together. So that way you won't be infected by it, hopefully. So
amazingly, we've not shared the same room in a long time.
It's been years, literally years.
No, it
right?
hasn't.
I mean, it's been years.
No, it hasn't.
It has been years. We have been doing this before COVID-19 in this format. May not have been doing it with Zoom, but we were doing it with Skype.
Oh, you've gotten together for lunch or something.
Well, I like to forget about those things. All right, so let's today we're going to talk about a guest we've had on before. He's a good friend of ours. We're going to talk about 7 things on your church website that might scare visitors away. And before we get into this, I want you to know that this podcast, Church Solutions Podcast, is brought to you by mychurchdaily.com. Look it up, not now, but look it up later, mychurchdaily.com. It gives you, your church, the ability to have flash briefings on Alexa devices, on Amazon Echo devices. You can do it very quickly, very simply. We'll help you do it. And as a 14-day free trial, mychurchdaily.com. Check it out. And it's actually brought to you by us. So it's us. So our guest today is been the CEO for over 18 years of a company called Our Church, ourchurch.com, O-U-R, church.com. They do website designs, they do hosting, they help churches do marketing, search marketing. They do lots of different things with ministries and schools and even some businesses. His name is Paul Steinbrück. Paul, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Phil. It's good to be with you and Steve again.
Yeah, we've had you on multiple times here. It's always good. So this is a subject that I really like. I came from a Unitarian background, and when I was exposed to Christianity, there were a lot of things I didn't understand. And it wasn't until later, actually, probably years later. I mean, I got in ministry relatively quickly, but I read a book by Rick Warren called The Purpose-Driven Church in the early 90s. And a lot of that started to open my eyes to how many times we scare people away before they even get the opportunity to hear the message of God's love. So you wrote an article on this. You have a blog, ourchurch.com. There's a blog on there. And one of the things you wrote about was 7 things that the church, especially when it comes to the websites, the church will do sometimes that happen to scare visitors away. So I thought we would get into that today.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think, I don't think any church ever intends to scare visitors away. Everybody says they're outreaching and they're friendly and they welcome new people, but a lot of times people just don't realize certain things on their website that are a turnoff to visitors or just feel exclusive or one way or another just feel unwelcoming to guests.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things that we reiterate, and you do as well, I believe, is your website's really the new front door for your church. I mean, the first exposure people are going to have is going to come through your website. And unlike the front door, once you walk through and get scared, you can't necessarily leave as easily as you can visiting a website. You can go, oh my gosh, you can get out of there and with no problem. So this is going to be.
I think almost everybody visits a church website before they come to visit in person for the first time. Yeah. And so, if your website scares people away, they're never going to physically cross the threshold of your church doors there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump into this here. And you've got 7 things here, but feel free to add more. The first point you make is if you use a free website address, such as, and you gave an example like fbr.wordpress.com or something else, that could possibly scare people away if you use a free website service. So expound on that a little bit. Why would that be such a problem?
Yeah, well, I think it just shows that if you're not willing to invest anything in your website, I mean, you can get a website nowadays with your own domain name, customized for your church for 10 to 20 bucks a month. And if you're not willing to do that to make it easy for people to get to your website, I mean, how much do you really care about the people that you're trying to reach? I think that's what it says. It's just harder to type in, it's harder to remember. And so you're really inconveniencing people. And for what, 10 or 20 bucks a month?
It's a very good point.
It's definitely not an area to skimp.
Yeah.
It's kind of the front door for your website as well, like the front door of your facility. Or your home, you want to have an appealing front door before they even come in. And if they go and see a website address that's, myfreesite.com / church, people just go, oh my gosh, even before they get to their website, they're looking at your URL and getting turned off.
I would liken that almost to signage, almost to a sign. I mean, you look at a bad sign. Some churches have terrible signs. It's like, but if you have a really nice, professional-looking sign, that to me that spells a lot. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's an analogy, Phil. I mean, it'd be kind of like just going out on a cardboard box and writing the name of your church on it, putting it up outside. Yeah. I think that would scare a lot of people away.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on here. Steve, what's point number 2?
Point number 2 is old announcements or just outdated content. In the middle of summer, having announcements about Easter or your past Christmas bash or whatever it may be is what you talk about. Now, why is that? What's the problem with having Paul, it takes a lot of work to keep this content fresh, right?
It does. I guess there's really 2 things. I mean, first of all, nobody's going to come to your Easter event if it happened 2-3 months ago, and nobody's going to know what your upcoming events are, and they're not going to be able to engage in your fall festival or, your new classes that you have coming out in the fall or whatever, if the information isn't on your website. So that's a big part of it. And then, of course, the other aspect of it is that it just shows a lack of concern for your visitors. Again, if you've got wrong information up there, it'd be kind of like, again, if you put out on your church sign in front, if you had like the wrong service times or something like that, that's going to be a big problem for people.
Yeah. This has nothing to do with, well, in some ways it does, but I'll bring it up anyhow. We send a streamingchurch.tv, one of our companies, we send out a newsletter every week. And I remember late last year, we have, people have vacation responders on their emails, right? I will be out of the office until, and there's this is from last year. I will be out of the office until Christmas, through Christmas and back, whatever it was, December 30th. That's been going on now for like what, a year or something, Steve? Have you ever seen that?
I have seen that. I've seen that same autoresponder. Yeah, that bounces back to us.
I just think it's
yeah.
I think this guy's on a permanent vacation or something.
Yes. Yes. He's going to be out on vacation for Christmas. Yes. And we're sending this stuff in August, getting this autoresponder. Yeah. It's a dead giveaway on your website, though, to have just old dated content, especially because you typically, when you post it, you're all excited about it. So you make it real prominent, come to our big Easter bash. It's going to be awesome. And then a month later, you still have this thing up. So it's super obvious normally if you're not maintaining your site.
Yeah.
Put some attention into it. All right. The third point here, which I was just listening to a podcast today from a young man who I think is pretty sharp. But this third point is prominent request for donations. So Paul, I mean, look, my church is totally dependent upon donations. So why shouldn't I have prominent donation request on my website?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's nothing wrong with having a give button or a donate button on your website, because everybody knows that churches are nonprofits and they've got to pay the bills and everything like that. But churches have a reputation sometimes for all they care about is your money, right? I mean, that's one of the things that outsiders complain about churches. And so, it's okay to have a place where people can donate, but is that the most important message that you're getting across? And I've seen this sometimes where like the first menu item on the top of the website is donate, and like it's prominent, like highlights around it and everything like that. And if the number one thing you want people to see on your website is give money to us, that's going to be a big, red flag. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to a church where that's the first thing, is that they want my money before they even want to share anything else with me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I've got, but before I was married, my wife had a roommate, and we happened to live right down the street from Chuck Swindoll's church. And I had been going to Chuck Swindoll, so I invited her to church. And I was just a major Chuck Swindoll fan at the time. And after the service, I said, what'd you think? What'd you think? When that, I was thinking, that message was so good. And he goes, they just asked for my money. I was like, what? He said, that's the only message she got, was they want my money. I was like, oh boy. So people are really sensitized to that, that are kind of outside the church. So yeah, I guess you got to be careful with it, because you do want to make it easy for those that are a part of your ministry that want to donate to be able to find how to donate, but you don't want to be so much in your face that you kind of promote that message that all I really care about is your money.
Yeah. And we advocate that people make it the last item in their navigation menu. And, when you do that, it really communicates, well, this is the lowest priority of all of the things on our website is for you to give. And I think that speaks a lot positively about a church when they do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is kind of related to donations. I don't know if you saw this, Steve, but there's a young man, he's based out of Canada. I think Brady Shear is his name. And I'm terrible with names, but he was talking about one of the mistakes that churches make when they're receiving the offering or asking, people to give. And I realize this is not necessarily a website thing, although it could be, was he talks about, many churches will get up and talk about, we're going to receive the offering. And so once your offering goes to help support the needy, the community food bank, we have missionaries in South Africa, this and that. And his point was, for most churches, those other areas, missionaries and community stuff is probably less than 10% of the church budget, maybe 20% at the most. But most of the church budget's going to go to utilities, upkeep, salaries. And his point was, you are minimizing, you're asking people to give to something that okay, there's a little bit of truth to it, but they need to support the church. It's okay to say, hey, we have to pay salaries. We have to pay the utility bills here. We have to make payments on our building in order for us to meet. And so I know I'm getting a little bit off track here, but I thought that was really good, because many times it's easy to get up and talk about other needs and hope that people give to that, where really the 10% or less of the budget goes to something like that. Does that make sense? What he expounded on it much better than I could, but I thought it was really good.
I think that's true. And I think, I've been a part of a church that even went a step further, that when they did their service and they passed around the offering plate, they said, hey, if you are visiting us, or if you're just checking the place out, even if you've been here 2, 3, 4 times, we want you to know that the offering is for people who are members of the church that understand the vision or are passionate about what we're doing.
Right.
And so if you're not a member, then you don't need to give. The service is our gift to you.
Yeah, don't feel obligated. Yeah, that's good stuff. We've done it at my church as well. All right, I know we're soaking up time here. Number four, things that could possibly scare people away that you have on your website. Number 4 is the infamous animated dove graphic.
Yes. Woo! So you got to go back all the way, like when we started ourchurch.com in the late 90s, people thought animated graphics were awesome, because nothing, it was like a cool new feature. And maybe it was 25 years ago, but now if you're putting something like that on your website, it just shows how dated your website is, and just not a good sign.
How hokey you are. I had getting off on another rabbit trail here. I used to be in broadcasting, and we had Christian radio. We had a morning show, and it was FM, and we were contemporary. And one of our listeners called in, and she was a Christian, and she had a tattoo shop. And my morning show partner, Dr. L, said, "Hey, I'd like a tattoo." She goes, "Come down. I'll give you, either one of you guys or both of you guys, free tattoos." And he ran down there and he got a tattoo of a dove, a Calvary Chapel dove. And because he was with Calvary Chapel at the time, which I don't think he is anymore. So anyhow, when you mentioned dove, I thought of that, and he's probably listening. He's probably not listening, but maybe I'll send him the link to this and tell him, hey, I mentioned you. Dove.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the things that we just have to be aware of, and it's not just doves in particular, but just getting an idea for what is modern when it comes to websites today. And if you're, it's the same kind of thing even in your church building. Like if you go into a church building and it looks like it was like time frozen in the 70s or something like that, it tells you something about the church and who they're trying to reach or what they're concerned about. Really, it tends to mean that they're not all that concerned with what's going on. And same thing on your website. If you're using technology from the 2000s, then there's that just says, well, it's just not that important to us what we do with our website and what we're doing to help visitors to our website.
Yeah, well, 2000s, that was just a couple of years ago, right? I'm sorry, it
must be quickly, doesn't it?
Must be the cold medication I'm on. All right, what's the next point, Steve?
So the next is an all text homepage. What do you mean about it? What is an all text homepage?
Just a homepage that has no graphics on it at all. And we don't see very much of this today, but back in the old days, again, it was hard to get pictures on your website. And nowadays, sometimes people, it still is challenging. Like you have to actually have somebody who goes and takes pictures of people and takes pictures of your worship services and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes we see churches where, well, they just haven't gotten to that yet. And so it's just all text about their church. And, we are more and more a visual society. We see things and visuals, images and video that usually more than anything touches our heart, and it helps us to connect with people. And that's really what people want to see when they come to a church's website. They want to see, are there people like me there? Will I fit in? That's one of the most important factors. And so having pictures of the people in your church, real people, better than stock photos even, but real people from your church that, if they come to your church, they're going to see these people and be able to interact with them, and they're just like them.
What about stock photos? So, what if you just don't have somebody that takes good pictures? Do you think stock photos are a no-no?
I think they are a tool of last resort, I would say. The fact of the matter is that nowadays, even middle school students have phones with cameras on it. And I'm pretty sure you can find even a high school student who could take great pictures. They're doing all kinds of social media stuff, and how their pictures means a lot to them. And so, they can, I would hire a teenager in your church if you think that nobody can do it or has time for it. That's a great solution if you need a solution like that.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce, I really align with this idea of having pictures of actual people, because you said people want to know whether they're going to fit in or whether it's people like them. And I think the other there's a couple of things I think churches look, or people looking for churches look for. That's probably number one. And then number two is what's the style of worship, and what's the style of the message as well.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the three things that people would be looking for. And if you have just all text and you say things, we're a welcoming environment, but you don't have the pictures, it just, people can't form an opinion about, oh, are these people, are there people my age? Are there people interested in the same things I'm interested in? Or, it's really important to have the photos. I really,
and I really recommend, if at all possible, to put video on your website so that people can see what a worship service looks like, and people can see the pastor and what his message is like. I mean, anything that you can do to take away the question marks as far as like, what is my experience going to be like, and help people to be comfortable going to your church, is going to make them more likely to come for a visit.
Yeah. It reminds me of a good friend of mine. He said the most uncomfortable time he's been in his life was in a church. So he was, and so you want to give him a little heads up before you get there. What's going to happen, what's going to be like.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So point number 6 on 7 things that could scare people away on your church website, 7 things that could do that. The point number 6 you make here is no address or service times.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, right? But every once in a while we see a church website where they haven't put their address or they haven't put the service times. Maybe they'll have like it on a contact page or something like that. If it's hard to find, it just makes it hard for people to visit. So I definitely recommend putting your address in the header or the footer of your website, the top or the bottom, so it's on every single page. And really your service time should be on your home page, and very easy for people to find. And of course, then getting back to one of the earlier points, if your service times change in the summer, or you do have different services for holidays, you got to update them before the service happens.
Yeah, absolutely. We hammer on people a lot. We do streaming videos, and many times we'll go to a church that signed up for us and look on their website for the link or the embed for the streaming video, and we can't find it. And even churches that have been doing it for a while, okay, where's the live stream at? Where is it at? Looking around, searching through pages and pages, can't find the live stream.
Yeah, that's definitely, I would say that's another must-have on your homepage. If you're live streaming, you got to have it on the homepage. Don't make people hunt around for it, because it's one of the first things people are going to be looking for. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Number 7, siete. Christianese. Christianese. What is Christianese? Is that from the Middle East, or is that from Asia?
Yeah.
What is that?
What's Christians tend to have their own language with their own words and all that kind of stuff. And in some ways that can be good, because, there's complex theological ideas like the Trinity and sanctification that, you need a word for those kind of things. But you've got to be thinking with the mindset of people who are not Christians. If you want people who are not Christians to attend your church, to visit your church, then don't use words that they don't understand, right? And sometimes we just get so into our church communities and using our church language that we forget about the words that people outside the church don't understand and don't know. And so it can be really difficult to do this. You might even have to have somebody who's an unbeliever come to your church website and read it and say, hey, is there anything here that you don't understand? Because a lot of times, churches are guilty of this. Again, not intentionally, but it's just the language that we use when we're talking with our church friends and everything like that. And it just, it just happens. Every what do you want to call it? Every industry, I'm not sure that's the best word, but they have their own acronyms and their own language, right. Whether it's technology stuff or, sports or whatever. And you have to like introduce that gradually once people are a part of your organization, not have it all up front where it's going to confuse people.
Yeah. What do you think of the argument that, well, look, if people are really searching for God, they're going to show up?
Well, I mean, there's maybe a little bit of truth to that, but we shouldn't be putting any barriers between people and the gospel, right? We want to make it as easy as possible for people to participate in a worship service, for them to hear the gospel. And so, we just want to communicate effectively, communicate in ways that people are going to understand us.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes people that have that argument get a little confused, and we're not saying that following Jesus is easy. We're not saying that it's just easy Christianity or whatever, but I think they get a little confused. And what your point is, let's remove the barriers for people so that they can actually hear the message, and then they can make a decision. And it's not always going to be easy, but yeah. All right, good. So that's the 7 points here. Anything else you want to add before we kick you out of here?
No, I mean, I think just the big thing is just to understand the overarching principles behind this is that you want to, when you're building your website, you want to have the mentality of a visitor. You want to try to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who maybe they haven't been to church in 2 or 3 years, or maybe they've never been to church at all. What is going to be welcoming? What are they going to be looking for before they come to visit your website? And if you don't know, ask somebody, ask somebody who hasn't been to a church in a while. But that's the general concept is, put yourself in the shoes of a visitor and make your website in a way that it's going to be friendly to them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Paul Steinbrook is the man here. He is the CEO of ourchurch.com. If you need some help with your church website or have questions or you don't like this podcast, just reach out to Paul. Ourchurch.com. That's probably the best way to get a hold of you, right? Just go to the website, right?
Yeah, just go to our website.
All right, sounds good. Okay. And again, folks, want to remind you, check out mychurchdaily.com. That's our new product, and it enables you to be on Amazon Alexa and for flash briefings and all that stuff. It's best way to tell you about it is just go to the website, mychurchdaily.com, and you can check it out. All right, good. Paul, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to have you on here.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. Good to talk with you guys.
Yeah, good deal. Steve, thank you for your input.
Always enjoy it.
All right. And folks, I'm Phil Thompson. Thank you for spending some time with us today on the Church Solutions Podcast. We'll catch you again next time. Take